Hey Siri, how do I stop my husband from adopting more aliens? Chapter 1. Use the sleeves on my sweater. A white blanket of snow covered green hills as winter slowly descended on the quiet town. It should be called White Hills right now, Tom thought, but he didn't voice the idea to Sonic, as he'd just grown about how Tom's dad jokes are terrible. Speaking of, the blue hedgehog had been acting off all day. He usually became more naturally sluggish during winter, which Tom figured was due to his hedgehog biology. He didn't hibernate, but he did run less and sleep later. Even then, he didn't stop running, and he certainly didn't spend the better part of 2 hours staring out the windows with a worried look on his face.
You doing all right, kiddo?
Tom asked, joining his son at the window. It was just him and Sonic in the house right now. Maddie had taken Knuckles and Tails shopping, and Ozzy was with the dog groomer. Maybe the silence was getting to Sonic, or maybe he was worried something would happen to the rest of their family, with all the ice on the roads. Maddie was one of the safest drivers Tom knew, but even then accidents happened. Sonic's ear flicked in acknowledgement, though it took a second for him to reply.
Yeah.
You sure? You've been looking out the windows for a while. Looking for something?
Do you think Shadow's doing okay?
Sonic asked quietly, almost hesitantly. The other hedgehog. Shadow was rarely mentioned within their walls, after what he'd done to Tom. Sonic didn't seem to hate him. He'd even insisted Shadow had had a change of heart, which was proven when he sacrificed himself to save Earth. Of course, Shadow wasn't actually dead, something they discovered only a month after the Eclipse Cannon incident. Sonic had apparently discovered that Shadow had found his old cave, and was living in it, as Sonic had when he first came to Earth. They had all agreed to stay away from Shadow, and Shadow had avoided them in turn. Tom didn't hate the kid. Even after he'd ended up in the hospital, he hadn't stayed angry at Shadow, or even really got angry at him to begin with, because Shadow hadn't meant to hurt him. He'd heard, only a second before Shadow hit him, the soft, pained whisper of Commander Walter's name. Tom didn't know what Walters did to Shadow, but he knew that Shadow wasn't a bad person. He was just a traumatized kid, and Tom couldn't fault him for that. The other members of their family didn't necessarily agree with that. Tails was terrified of Shadow, and Knuckles was still angry with him. Maddie understood how Tom felt about it, but she was still wary of Shadow. Tom was actually slightly relieved to hear that Sonic was worried for the other hedgehog. Some time ago, he'd admitted to nearly killing Shadow out of anger, to getting so close to losing himself in his rage that he could have taken the life of someone that didn't deserve such a brutal punishment. Before Shadow came along, Tom had believed Sonic wasn't capable of such a thing. But he was, and that was concerning. Sonic held such incredible powers, it would be so easy for him to abuse them.
Why do you ask?
Sonic sighed, fidgeting with one of his gloves.
It's just, I remember what it was like to spend the winter in that cave. It was horrible. I was constantly freezing, and the cold made me tired, sometimes too tired to eat. And I felt sick for a lot of it. I'm worried Shadow is going through what I did.
Tom's eyes widened. Sonic hadn't told him of his experience with the winter in that cave before. It made his heart clench when he remembered Sonic had been in that cave for years before he'd met Tom. He'd been so young, suffering somewhere nobody would find him. What if he'd frozen to death in that cave? He'd only been a child, forced to care for himself in horrible conditions. And Shadow might be in the same situation right now.
He lived in a lab before. He probably didn't have to deal with the winter like this. And this is his first winter without Maria. He's already miserable, having to live through all this.
He gestured to the snow outside.
On top of it is like a scooter to the ankle.
Tom snorted. He didn't think he'd ever get Sonic to try riding a scooter again after that first time, and the offending scooter had been banished to the garage indefinitely.
What do you think we should do about that?
Sonic's gaze snapped to Tom instantly, eyes wide.
If you think Shadow needs help, then we should help him, right?
You would actually do that, but he hurt you.
You know, I shot you with a tranq dart when we first met. I think I'm just doomed to have horrible first meetings with alien hedgehogs.
Sonic chuckled slightly, but it didn't take long for his frown to return.
Would Mom be okay with us helping him? And how would we even help him to begin with? And the only thing that would actually help would be getting him out of that cave and into somewhere warmer.
Tom ran a soothing hand over Sonic's quills. It was always so easy for him to get himself worked up over helping people. Since that first time he saved Green Hills from Robotnik, he felt like it was his job to save anyone he could. And yeah, he was great at helping people, but it wasn't easy and Sonic was still so young. The stress of all this would get to him eventually, and Tom couldn't help but worry. Sonic sighed and leaned into the hand petting his quills.
Would Shadow even accept our help? He doesn't trust humans, and I don't blame him for that. I don't think I'd trust humans either if they hurt me like they hurt him.
Well, there's only one way to find out, right?
Sonic looked up at him.
What do we do?
I'm gonna go call Maddie and tell her what you told me. If she is alright with it, you and I are gonna drive down to your old cave and see if Shadow will come home with us.
Sonic's eyes widened.
Really?
Yep. We can set up the guest room for him and let him stay here during the winter.
Or longer if needed. Tom hated the idea of another homeless kid hiding out in a cave like Sonic had, and he knew Maddie would hate it too. Sonic shivered as he and Tom stepped out of the car. Even bundled up in a thick jacket Tom insisted he wear, it was still freezing out. Shadow must be doing far worse than he was right now. They walked through the forest, the snow crunching under their shoes. The cave wasn't far from the tree line, they wouldn't have to walk far. It was still longer than Sonic would have preferred to walk in this weather. He wanted to just run to the cave and talk to Shadow already, but Tom wanted them to meet with him together. When they finally made it to the cave, Sonic stopped Tom from getting closer.
Can I just warn him that you're here? If he's not doing okay right now, he might get jumpy if he sees a human.
By jumpy, Sonic meant murdery. He didn't think Shadow had ever actually killed a human, but he couldn't be certain. Tom nodded, an understanding look on his face.
Go ahead, I'll wait here.
Sonic jumped down into the cave as quiet as he could. The cave was filled with snow, with only the deepest edges staying snow-free. At first glance, he didn't see anyone. Then he noticed a small dark ball of quills in the darkest corner of the cave. Shadow was shivering, his quills shaking with each breath he took. It looked like he was curled up as tight as he could manage, a last-ditch effort to keep himself warm. The sight made Sonic's chest ache. He knew what that was like, and he knew that it never worked.
Shadow?
Chaos energy briefly crackled over Shadow, a surprised response. But he didn't uncurl, if anything, he curled up tighter.
It's Sonic. I wanted to make sure you were okay.
Shadow didn't respond that time.
I'm not here alone. Do you remember Tom? The human you thought was Commander Walters?
That caught Shadow's attention. He uncurled just enough for one of his eyes to be visible. The iris lit up red with chaos energy as he glared at Sonic. So he wasn't happy about that. Oops.
Why did you bring a human here?
Shadow demanded, though it was hard to make out his words, as they were muffled and stuttered.
We just wanted to talk to you for a minute. Is it all right if Tom enters the cave?
A low growl came from the dark hedgehog. Sonic didn't expect him to agree immediately. Shadow was in a vulnerable position, and he already hated, even feared humans. Sonic was surprised Shadow had even allowed him to stay this close without attacking him yet. It was just instinct.
I promise, he won't hurt you.
The eye Sonic could see narrowed slightly. After a moment, Shadow finally uncurled from his quills, standing up slowly. He was trembling.
You better make this quick.
Shadow snapped, wrapping his arms around himself. Without responding, Sonic hopped out of the cave and returned to Tom's side.
All right, you can come in now.
Tom nodded and followed Sonic back into the cave. Shadow's ears pinned back when he saw Tom. He backed up, hissing quietly as his quills raised. Tom wondered if he even realized he was doing it. Sonic had done the same thing after startling awake from a nightmare, but he hadn't meant to. Tom held his hands up.
Hey, it's okay. I don't want to hurt you, kid.
Wrong move. Shadow's lips drew back in a snarl, his eyes lighting up again.
Dad, lower your hands.
Tom lowered his hands slowly, keeping them down at his sides. Shadow watched the movement, his quills relaxing minutely. He stared at Tom warily, but didn't appear to feel actively threatened at the moment.
Why are you here?
We just wanted to check on you. The snow came down pretty heavily last night. Sonic said winters are rough in the cave. We wanted to make sure you were all right.
Shadow scoffed, but he didn't argue the point.
Hey, I lived through almost a decade of winters in this cave. I know how horrible it is. You shouldn't have to live through that.
What am I meant to do? Not everyone has a family like you. A home.
Sonic glanced to Tom. Tom knelt down to talk to Shadow at eye level. Shadow's quills relaxed further, though he still looked tense.
You don't need to stay in this cave all winter, Shadow.
Shadow blinked in confusion, one of his ears twitching.
If you would agree to it, you can stay with us during the winter.
Shadow's eyes widened in shock, and it hit Tom then, just how much Shadow looked like Sonic. He must be around Sonic's age, maybe even a bit younger. He'd gone through so much at such a young age. Of course he couldn't believe someone was offering to help him right now.
What?
We have a guest room back at the house. If you want, you could stay with us until the weather warms up.
Tom shrugged.
Or longer.
Shadow's expression softened, something like a fragile hope flashing in his eyes. But it was gone as quick as it had come.
Why would you offer that after what I did to you?
Instead of answering, Tom asked.
Did you mean to hurt me?
Shadow hesitated.
I know, but...
I forgive you.
That shut Shadow up completely. He stared at Tom in disbelief.
You made a mistake, kiddo. I'm not going to stay mad at you over a mistake. If you need somewhere to stay, you can stay with us.
Shadow shifted, and Tom realized he'd been shaking this whole time. Whether it was due to the cold or because the dark hedgehog was anxious, he couldn't tell.
I don't.
Shadow glanced to the dirt under him.
I promise you'll be safe with us, Shadow.
Shadow's eyes squeezed shut.
I need to think about it.
Do you know where we live?
Shadow nodded, looking sheepish.
All right. If you decide to take us up on our offer, you can come over at any time. Got it.
Shadow nodded again. Tom stood up and nudged Sonic's shoulder.
Come on, bud. Let's go home.
Sonic looked reluctant to leave, but he followed Tom out of the cave anyway. On the drive back home, Sonic was a little too quiet.
Something on your mind, Sonic?
Tom asked, turning down their familiar street. Sonic shrugged.
Just wondering if Shadow's gonna come over or not. I'm worried he might just force himself to suffer through the winter alone out of fear.
Well, it's his decision. Either way, I'm sure he'll be okay. If he can survive an explosion in space, he can survive a little snow.
Sonic frowned, saying nothing. He stared out the car window and watched as the sun slowly began to set. 3 days passed before Tom and Sonic saw Shadow again. They just finished watching a movie together. Tom and Maddie were snuggled up under one blanket together while Sonic, Tails and Knuckles shared another. Sonic and Tails had fallen asleep already, and it looked like Knuckles was about to pass out as well. They'd ended up staying up later than usual as baseball had lasted longer than it normally did. The kids had decided that they'd stayed inside too long because of the snow, that they'd finally decided to brave the cold so they could play outside. Tom and Maddie taught them how to make snowmen before they played their usual games. Just as Maddie was turning the TV off for the night, a quiet knock at their front door drew their attention. Knuckles fully startled awake, jolting Sonic and Tails in the process.
Who is entering our domain at such an hour?
Sonic mumbled something along the lines of,
Knucklehead.
as he rubbed his eyes. Next to him, Tails yawned and curled up against Sonic again, uncaring of their mystery visitor.
I've got it.
Tom told Maddie as he stood up from the couch. He walked to the front door and opened it. On the other side stood a dark-furred hedgehog, his quills dotted with snowflakes. He wasn't even shivering anymore, despite being covered in snow, and the skin around his mouth was tinged blue. He must have been hypothermic.
Shadow.
Tom greeted quietly. He heard Maddie gasp from the living room. Apparently Tom hadn't been quiet enough, as his kids also heard him. Sonic perked up instantly, all previous tiredness forgotten as he peeked over the couch toward the door.
Shadow's here?
The more impressive hedgehog dares disturb us. I shall.
Sonic shoved a hand over Knuckles' mouth.
Dude, shush.
Shadow's ears were pinned to his head, and he was staring down at his shoes. He seemed to shrink in on himself when Knuckles spoke. Tom knelt down just as he had a few days prior.
Hey, kiddo, are you doing all right?
He spoke quietly, almost whispering, to make sure the others wouldn't overhear him. Slowly, Shadow shook his head. Tom thought he saw the glint of tears forming in Shadow's eyes.
Come on, let's get you warmed up, yeah?
Tom stood to the side of the door, letting Shadow enter. He looked to Maddie.
Can you get a towel?
Maddie nodded and left the room. Shadow hesitated in the doorway, almost like he couldn't believe he was allowed into their home. After a moment, he walked in, a few bits of snow falling off his quills and onto the tile. Knuckles glared at Shadow. He looked to Tom and tried saying something, but his mouth was still covered by Sonic's hand. Suddenly, Sonic yelped and pulled his hand away.
Did you just bite?
What is he doing here?
Knuckles gestured to Shadow.
Why have you let him in? He's dangerous.
For a split second, Shadow looked genuinely hurt, but it was gone quickly. The hedgehog just rolled his eyes, looking away from the couch. Maddie returned with a towel. She stopped in front of Shadow, smiling softly.
Hi there, sweetie. Can I help you dry off your quills?
Shadow inhaled sharply, flinching back. His quills raised defensively. Sonic stood up from the couch and ran to Maddie's side.
He doesn't like humans, remember?
He held out his hand for the towel.
Give it to me.
Maddie handed the towel to Sonic, and he slowly walked toward Shadow.
Hey, Shads. Quick question. Is the eyeliner waterproof, or should we avoid it to keep from smudging it?
Shadow blinked.
Eyeliner?
Sonic gestured to his own face.
The red around your eyes. That is makeup, right? Super cool, by the way.
It took Tom a moment to realize what Sonic was doing. He was using absurd questions to distract Shadow from his fear, and it was working.
That isn't makeup.
No? Then what is it?
How should I know?
Sonic shrugged, now standing only a foot away from Shadow.
As far as I know, hedgehogs don't usually have patterns like that. It looks nice, though.
It does?
Shadow's expression softened.
Yeah! Man! It kinda makes you look like a living stuffed animal.
Shadow froze, then started laughing quietly. It was a startled noise. He'd obviously been caught off guard. Or maybe he just wasn't used to laughing anymore. While Shadow was distracted, Sonic pressed the towel to one of Shadow's grouped quills. The other hedgehog stiffened, but he didn't stop Sonic. Knuckles was still watching from the couch, and all the commotion had finally managed to rouse Tails as well.
All right, boys, time for bed.
Maddie said, walking back to the couch.
You expect me to sleep when there is an enemy within our walls.
I don't see any enemies.
Tom said, leaning against the wall.
But
Knuckles, go to bed. We'll talk tomorrow. You too, Tails.
What about Sonic?
Tails asked, his tail swishing nervously behind him.
Sonic is gonna stay up a bit longer. He'll join you guys soon.
Knuckles clearly wanted to argue further, but one stern look from Maddie had him holding his tongue. He sighed and moved to the stairs, glancing pointedly between Sonic and Shadow as he and Tails went up to their room.
Good night, boys.
Night, Mom.
I'm gonna go get the guest room ready.
Maddie told Tom. He nodded in acknowledgement. Sonic finished drying off Shadow's quills, the last flecks of snow either melting onto the towel or falling on the floor. Tom would definitely need to dry the tile off later.
Feeling any better?
A particularly strong shiver racked Shadow's body, but only once. He was beginning to warm up, at least.
Somewhat.
Here, come sit on the couch.
Tom said, walking past the living room and into the kitchen.
Do you like tea, Shadow?
Yes.
Shadow replied, following Sonic to the living room. He was still wrapping his arms around himself, though Tom couldn't tell if it was to warm himself up or if it was a self-soothing gesture.
Sonic, do you remember how to light the fireplace?
Yep.
Sonic replied, already speeding over to the fireplace without Tom asking. While Tom started preparing some tea, he occasionally glanced over to the living room at Sonic and Shadow. Sonic finished lighting the fireplace and placed a couple cushions on the floor a safe distance from the flames before leading Shadow over to one of them. Shadow seemed reluctant to sit near the fire, but his need for warmth beat whatever was causing the hesitation. Sonic went back to the couch and grabbed a blanket before joining Shadow near the fire.
Here?
Sonic muttered, wrapping the blanket around Shadow before sitting down on the second cushion.
This should warm you up.
Thank you.
Shadow said, so quiet Tom almost hadn't heard it.
No problem, Shads.
Shadow huffed.
Don't call me that.
Why not?
It's stupid.
Too bad. It's that or Hot Topic.
Tom thought he heard a soft chuckle from the dark hedgehog. The boys got quiet for a few moments.
I'm sorry.
Shadow mumbled. Tom had barely been able to make out the words.
For what?
Sonic asked, very obviously confused.
Ugh.
Shadow groaned in frustration.
I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't need help. My presence here is an unnecessary burden.
Tom's chest constricted at Shadow's words. When he'd offered a place for Shadow to stay, the last thing he'd wanted was for the kid to think he would cause problems just by being here. He wanted Shadow to feel safe here. But before Tom could say anything about it, Sonic spoke up.
Whoa. Okay, stop there. You're not a burden, Shadow. And there's nothing wrong with needing help. Everybody needs help sometimes.
Shadow scoffed, doubtful.
Even you.
Yeah, Shads. Even me.
Sonic let out a slight laugh.
Especially me.
Really?
Shadow's voice was quiet and vulnerable.
In fact, that's actually how I met Tom.
Sonic glanced over to the kitchen, his eyes meeting Tom's briefly. He smiled softly before looking back to Shadow.
Gunn found out about me, and they weren't very happy about me existing. Guess I reminded them of somebody.
Shadow snorted.
They tracked me back to the cave, and I panicked. So I ran to this house, broke into Tom's shed, and hid there. I was gonna use a ring to leave Earth, but Tom found me and shot me with some sort of dart. I passed out, lost my rings, and woke up in a dog cage. I didn't know how to get my rings back, so Tom had to help me. We went on the coolest road trip ever!
That road trip was not cool. Gunn was after us the whole time. Sonic started a bar fight. And Robotnik nearly destroyed our little town.
Sonic waved a hand dismissively.
The road trip had its ups and downs. My point is, I needed help, and Tom helped me. And he's continued to help me since. There's nothing wrong with that.
Shadow seemed to curl in on himself slightly. He was finally starting to shiver again, though it wasn't as bad as it had been when Tom and Sonic found him in the cave a few days ago. Tom poured some boiling water into a mug and placed the tea bag in. Chamomile. Supposedly good for stress, according to Maddie, but Tom wouldn't know. He'd always preferred coffee. He waited for the tea to cool off before bringing it to Shadow. Maddie had told him enough about hypothermia to know not to give a hot drink to someone suffering from it. Introducing too much heat at once could send Shadow's body into shock. Once the tea was at a safer temperature, Tom brought it into the living room, placing the mug on the floor next to Shadow.
Here, bud. This should help warm you up.
Thank you.
Shadow said, taking the mug and taking a cautious sip. His eyes fell shut, a soft sigh passing his lips. When he opened his eyes, he looked to Tom with a mix of confusion and, buried underneath it, fear. Tom tried not to look too deeply into it. Of course Shadow was afraid, after everything humans had put him through.
I still don't understand why he would help me. We aren't friends. You aren't gaining anything from this.
The way he said it, it almost sounded like a question, as if he were trying to figure out what they wanted from him.
You think we need incentive to help you?
Tom asked, not judging, just curious. Shadow shrugged, his gaze falling to the carpet. Sonic's face fell when he came to the same conclusion Tom did. Shadow was just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Do you think of yourself as a kid, Shadow?
Shadow blinked up at Tom, eyes wide with shock.
What?
Did you ever get the chance to be a kid?
The way Shadow had acted, working with Robotnik, Tom had almost assumed he was an adult. He acted far more mature than Sonic and even Knuckles. He had this look in his eyes like he'd seen far too much at a young age, and it forced him to grow up faster. But seeing him now, sitting on the floor, bundled up in a blanket and trembling, he just looked like a scared kid. How could Tom have mistaken him for an adult? He was so young, probably around Sonic's age if he had to guess. 13, maybe 14 at the oldest. Shadow's ears flattened slightly.
I barely even got the chance to be a person. The scientists only saw me as a means for power, an endless supply of chaos energy. I was only ever treated well by them if I performed well. Any failure meant punishment.
He swallowed roughly.
They saw me as dangerous. They looked at me like I was a monster.
Tom took a deep breath, ignoring the slowly growing anger. These are things that happened 50 years ago. Everyone involved was either dead or in a retirement home. His anger wouldn't help anyone, especially not Shadow.
It's not like that here. Not with us. We aren't helping you because we expect anything in return,
Sonic said. He nudged Shadow's shoulder gently, waiting for the dark hedgehog to look at him.
Shadow, I promise I'll never let anyone hurt you like that again. Okay?
Shadow's breath hitched. With shaking hands, he set his mug back down, then covered his face. Tom frowned when he heard Shadow cry quietly. It was muffled, and Tom thought Shadow might have been trying to hold his emotions back. Sonic didn't hesitate before wrapping his arms around the other hedgehog. Shadow only stiffened for a moment before leaning into Sonic's embrace. Unfortunately, that was when Maddie decided to return to the living room. She froze in the doorway, seeing one hedgehog crying on the floor while the other held him through it. She shot a questioning look to Tom, her expression slowly filling with worry. Tom slipped away from the hedgehogs, neither of them noticing his absence, and joined Maddie at the doorway.
What happened?
Shadow's just going through it. Apparently the gun scientists were mistreating him badly.
No wonder he doesn't like humans. Seems like he trusts Sonic, though.
Tom hummed. He exhaled softly.
What are we going to do about him? If he decides to stay once it stops snowing?
Well, he needs a therapist or something. But that's not really going to help if he's too scared of humans. To talk to one about everything he went through.
Oh yeah, obviously. But I meant Maddie, what are we going to do?
Maddie didn't respond for a moment, watching the two hedgehogs. Shadow slowly calmed down, his sobs turning into occasional hiccups. He didn't move away from Sonic's embrace, and Sonic didn't stop holding him.
You're thinking about adopting another alien, aren't you?
Maddie said, her tone exasperated, but her small grin gave her away. Tom scoffed.
You thought about it too.
Of course I did. Who else would protect them if we didn't?
Tom chose not to think about things like that. It would only keep him up at night. It was horrific, knowing what could have happened to Sonic if Tom had handed him over to Gun just last year. Would they have treated him like they treated Shadow, or just killed him?
Shadow needs people who care about him. He deserves to have a normalish childhood.
Tom nodded in agreement.
Then, we're on the same page here?
We are.
Sonic whispered something to Shadow. Tom couldn't make out the words, but whatever it was made Shadow laugh. His voice was still frail from crying, but he sounded slightly less upset than before.
You're the worst.
You love me.
Sonic said teasingly.
I do not.
You wound me, Shads.
Sonic put a hand over his heart, flopping backward on the floor dramatically. Shadow rolled his eyes, his annoyance softened by the slightest smirk. Maddie went to bed while Tom waited for Shadow to finish his tea, letting the two hedgehogs talk while Shadow continued to warm up and hopefully relax a bit. It was understandable why he'd be so tense in a house filled with people he'd once fought, but Tom wanted Shadow to know that he was safe here.
Oh, and we need to watch Speed together. It's like the best movie ever made. Hey, you know you kinda sound like Keanu Reeves?
Who?
Shadow asked, placing his now empty mug next to him.
Oh man, you've missed out on 50 years of fantastic movies. We should binge watch Star Wars too. Or the first two trilogies at least. You don't deserve to be tortured with the third one. The first movie actually came out in the 70s. I think you missed it by a couple years.
Alright, that's gonna have to wait until tomorrow.
Tom said, taking the empty mug and putting it in the kitchen sink to be washed later.
Get ready for bed, Sonic. I'll help Shadow get settled.
Sonic groaned. Despite his protests, Tom had seen the way his eyes were drooping earlier.
Come on, bud. You need sleep, and so does Shadow.
Sonic sighed dramatically.
Fine.
He threw his arms around the dark hedgehog.
Good night, Shadow.
Shadow stiffened.
Good night.
Night, Dad.
Sonic said as he ran to the staircase, making it to his and his brother's shared bedroom in less than 2 seconds. Tom shook his head in amusement, then looked back to the living room.
Ready for bed, kiddo?
Shadow wrapped his arms around himself.
I'm sorry.
Tom blinked.
Sorry.
For hurting you. I didn't know. I thought you were.
Hey, I already told you, I forgive you. It's okay, Shadow.
Shadow's shoulders jolted, and Tom realized he was holding back tears. Slowly, Tom knelt down before the hedgehog and opened his arms, letting Shadow choose to come to him or not. Shadow's eyes widened, and he only hesitated for a moment before walking into Tom's embrace. Tom wrapped his arms around Shadow's trembling form, feeling how tense the hedgehog still was. It broke his heart how cold Shadow still was. He couldn't tell if Shadow's trembling was caused by the cold or his current levels of anxiety.
You don't have to worry here, Shadow. Nobody's mad at you. Nobody wants to hurt you. You're safe, I promise.
That was what finally broke him. Shadow cried against Tom's chest, this time not holding himself back. These were loud, gut-wrenching sobs that had Shadow shaking with each one. He clung to Tom desperately, almost like he was afraid he would be pushed away. Tom held him tighter, running his hand over Shadow's quills like he did for Sonic when he was upset. He kept his touch light, in case he startled the hedgehog in his arms. All it would take was one wrong move for Shadow to raise his quills in defense and stab Tom's hand. Sonic had accidentally pricked him a couple times in the past. Luckily, the soothing gesture seemed to help calm Shadow. After a few minutes, his sobs quieted, turning into broken gasps and sighs. A quiet clicking noise drew Tom's attention as Shadow's breathing finally evened out. He moved one of his hands to Shadow's back, and smiled a little when he felt a gentle rumbling beneath his palm. Shadow was purring.
Feeling better, kiddo?
Tom asked, petting the space between Shadow's ears.
You're warm.
Tom chuckled. Poor kid needed some rest. He scooped the sleepy hedgehog up in his arms and walked to the guest room, ignoring Shadow's half-hearted protests. He was relieved to see that there weren't any scattered boxes or unused furniture left in the guest room. It had basically become a spare storage space a few years back, but Tom and Maddie had finally gotten to cleaning it up when Tails and Knuckles moved in, just in case they needed a different place to stay. They'd never had any problems with sharing a room with Sonic, though, so the room had stayed vacant. It was mostly empty, with only a bed against the back wall and a currently empty wardrobe, but they could always add to it if Shadow's stay became permanent. Tom set Shadow on the bed, helping him remove his shoes before covering him with the comforter. The dark hedgehog fought to keep his eyes open, but it was clear he was exhausted.
Get some rest, kiddo.
Tom ran a hand over Shadow's head, earning a particularly loud purr. Just as he was about to leave the room, Shadow called out to him, making him pause.
Tom?
Yeah?
Thank you.
You're welcome. If you need anything, I'm in the room down the hall, all right?
Shadow didn't respond. One glance back, and Tom realized he'd already fallen asleep. Tom clicked the light off, leaving the room. He, Maddie, and Shadow would need to talk privately, sometime after he's gotten the chance to get used to his new surroundings. They'd need to discuss whether or not Shadow would want his stay here to become permanent, and if not, where he'll go next. Tom hated the idea of leaving Shadow in that cave, but his fear of humans, and his current need to hide from Gun, wouldn't allow him to stay in any nearby homeless shelters. He hoped by showing Shadow that he truly was safe here, it would help Shadow get over his fear of humans, or at the very least fear of him and Maddie, and he would agree to stay. For now, all he could do was make sure Shadow was comfortable here, and hope that Knuckles wouldn't give him too much grief for it tomorrow.